Okay, gotta see if the audio, everything's okay. That sounds good. And I think the other audio will be okay as well. So I watched this with Viva Frey and Sam Cooper. Holy smokes. I've watched a few other things with Sam Cooper, and I thought I would share this as well. So there's a lot of people need to wake up in Canada. It is horrendous what's going on here. So I'll just let Viva Frey talk with Sam Cooper and fill everybody in what's going on here. So let me get this fired up here and we'll get started. So I'm going to disappear and there we go. Let's fire you up there, Viva.
And the drug trade, the fentanyl trade. Yes, the fentanyl capital of the world, with fentanyl super labs, with TD Bank being ordered to pay billions of dollars in criminal and civil penalties because they were allowing Chinese criminals to launder money through Canadian banks. Oh, you think Trump didn't know that when he issued the tariffs and Pierre stepped in it? Good. He ran around the house a little bit with that poop on his shoe, but he didn't jump on the bed. So at least he kept a part of the house clean. And now he is discreetly, casually trying to backtrack while saving face. And may he restore that relationship with Donald Trump, because whether or not he thinks it's politically popular in Canada, it's necessary to win an election, and it's necessary to be deemed capable of being the next Prime Minister of Canada. And we're going to talk about the fentanyl crisis in Canada. We got Sam Cooper back on the channel again today. We're going to go over this. And then we're going to have Pleb the reporter come on at 5 o'clock. And I'm going to tell Pleb everything I just told you. We had a discussion this morning. Pleb thinks he's proselytized me. I'm not supporting anybody. I will criticize everybody where they need criticism, and I will go out of my way to destroy that POS 3 passport carrying globalist whore, Mark Carney, who is less Canadian. Oh my goodness, he's so Canadian, he goes out and buys maple syrup. You know what type of Canadian has to buy maple syrup? Nobody. You have your maple syrup. You got tons of it. You got those beautiful little cylinder cans. You use a little V-shaped thing and you pop it open. Sam, you want to come on in? Sam Cooper, people. You may remember, you look different today.
I got my Blue Jays camo hat on.
And you don't have glasses on.
Yeah, I used to play a lot of sports, but lately my sport is writing, so I wear my glasses a lot more.
Dude, you look like, well, first of all, you look 10 years younger and you look like a totally different person. Like I would, this is a good incognito if you ever want to not get recognized.
Viva, like I told people that due to the circumstances in my life, I've been doing some hand-to-hand with a former JTF2 guy. I'm not joking. So people, don't get it twisted. I can throw down if I have to.
I'm looking to see your ears are not yet cauliflowered. If you ever look at someone and their ears are cauliflowered, you don't mess with that person. Sir, you're looking good. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the latest, the latest of the week. You know what? I even want to start well from the beginning. Tell people who you are, just so they know your credentials. Because I'll say first, you are one of Canada's last true journalists.
Well, I've been a journalist for 20 years in Canada. The short story is, like you, at one point I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't exactly go all the way down that path. I diverted into journalism, very much loving the same sort of work that good lawyers do, finding facts, pursuing truth, speaking truth to power. And so I've done it for 20 years at major newspapers and a Canadian broadcaster. And in 2023, after breaking some major stories about China's deep penetration into our parliament, also stories about China's deep penetration into our financial markets and the fentanyl trade, I started my own platform, the Bureau.news. And it's growing pretty rapidly, and I'm glad to be with you again.
Well, okay, so the news of the week. Well, first, let's back this all the way up to the beginning. In Cryptus, in the backdrop, you can hear me. He's going to, come in every now and again. We were going over the numbers because I was going to tweet out, we're not the fentanyl cap. Someone says we're not the fentanyl capital of the world. I think, first of all, there's not exactly an Olympics for this. They don't give out a gold medal.
Yeah, that's a bad award.
No, and I say, like, how many people are dying of overdoses a month in Canada? Do you know this number offhand?
It should be thousands. So it's over 50,000 now in total. And I grew like the short story here. I should have said my bio. I grew up as a cub reporter in Vancouver, learning why we had the most expensive sort of to real income real estate and the most fentanyl deaths per capita should be in North America, maybe, Virginia or somewhere, or sorry, like Rust Belt, West Virginia, may be up there on opioid deaths. But Vancouver is the hot spot of China, running in their offshore fentanyl factories and using our economy at scale. So just put it this way, I cut my teeth on reporting in one of the most clear death zones in the world. That's the downtown east side, where people are dying daily from fentanyl overdoses.
It's Canada-wide, at least at last check, it was 606 a month dying from opioid overdoses, of which 80 some odd percent is fentanyl related. It's 50,000 in the last 6 years. It's obscene. And I don't know what more you need to understand that. I'm very happy to see Pierre Poilievre changing tack a little bit and addressing the tariffs from a different angle. What was the big story of the week? Because there's another super fentanyl lab bust. I think we didn't really get into the TD Canada and the criminal penalties that they were ordered to pay because they were knowingly laundering Chinese drug money. Can we flesh that out a bit?
Yeah, so I've been leading in North America by having sources with direct knowledge of this TD Bank case, which should be material to Canada's future, really. And the US government had to investigate how Canada's major international bank, the biggest one, I believe, from Canada in the US, was being used essentially to, you could say, wittingly allowing money laundering to occur through its branches in the tri-state area, major market. And the short story here is, Viva, I'll take a step back. I became internationally known for discovering the Vancouver model. That was Chinese international students in Vancouver were running bags of cash into Canadian government-regulated casinos at scale. The highest year, for the context here, 1.4 billion in drug cash, all related to China, laundered through a British Columbia government-regulated casino. And so this is amazing because I'm the only one in the world that's really broken the story that TD Bank, it was running the same way. Chinese international students in America on study visas are being used by Chinese organized crime to launder Mexican cartel distributed fentanyl cash. How it works is this cash is collected, in underground vaults, basically in the tri-state, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Chinese money brokers set up in Toronto and Mexico City are running a global money laundering operation. And they essentially have money brokers on the ground in New York that tell these students, pick up this cash, walk it into TD Bank branches. And that's what happened. That's the fentanyl money laundering story. And the key here is the US government isn't done with this deferred prosecution. There could be executives in Toronto. Who knows? Maybe this goes up to the board level of TD. As a lawyer, you know very well. Look, if you're running a major financial business and you see suspicious activity, you need to look at what's wrong, and your compliance demands that if you see that reports are saying students are walking bags of cash into your bank branch, that's a problem. And TD's management in Toronto let it go. That's why they're on the hook, and it could get worse. So
the bags of cash that they're getting, that they're laundering through businesses, is coming from sales in Canada, or is it foreign currency that's brought in, or is it Canadian currency that's brought in from abroad?
So this is working across North America, but the focus, it's only prosecuted in the United States. So to break it down, yes, of course, as we know, the fentanyl precursors are coming into Mexico. They're coming into Vancouver. The fentanyl is being pressed up in pills. It's being, of course, distributed across Canada. It's being distributed into the United States. And so the cartels are very often, as you know, this is why they're now terrorist designated, brutal. They are dealing that fentanyl on New York streets. The cash from those sales is collected. It goes into essentially the backs of, let's say, a noodle house, a massage parlor, a nail salon, an underground casino, and a financial broker, that is someone that picks up contracts from Mexican cartels to launder their drug money, tasks these students to go in and pick it up and walk into TD Bank. And then it goes into the Canadian financial system, And essentially, then it gets a lot more complex. It goes basically to China, to Mexico. It goes into manufacturing. And this is how, fentanyl is moved into American cities, a very, very complex system with Chinese crime at the very top of it.
You mentioned precursors the last time, and then I didn't ask the question, and I realized I should have. What I know what it is, I've looked into it, but explain to the people who may not know what precursors are when it comes to the fentanyl trade or production.
Yeah, synthetic opioids. So we're talking, it's fentanyl, but of course, very related, methamphetamine, ketamine, other hard drugs. China is producing all of the precursors in their factories, and they don't want to press up the pills, those deadly toxic pills, on their side of the pond in China. So they send these chemical precursors into Mexico and Canada, which have loose laws. We're learning in Canada corruption. And so, it's like China also sends out pill presses. They send out the dyes, the binding agents, the labor to put this stuff together. That's the super lab story in Canada. So it's an offshore production of China's fentanyl precursors. And I don't want to forget another major revelation from my story that was put out this morning. The US government has investigated and knows that senior Chinese Communist Party members own the fentanyl factories. They have what's called golden shares in these fentanyl companies. And Viva, it's so, US intelligence is so powerful. They know that People's Republic state-run prisons are producing fentanyl. So the ties between China and fentanyl are explicit. And really, at the end of the day, when I'm stepping back, this is why you slap a 50% tariff on China. To be very blunt, the US government has been talking to them for years. Stop it. We don't want our people to die. China, of course, wants Americans to die. So they're not going to stop it. Stop trading with them. End of the day.
I'm gonna give everybody the link to this, but this is your latest publication. CCP, Communist Chinese Party, Golden Shares, Toronto Laundering Command, Mexican Chinese Cash Collectors, and TD Bank inside the global fentanyl trade. We're going to walk through this in a second. I want to just bring this up. I've brought it up before, but this is a Department of Justice. When is this one from? October 2024, right before the election. TD Bank pleads guilty to Bank Secrecy Act and money laundering conspiracy violations in a $1.8 billion resolution. TD, this is my bank, the 10th largest bank in the United States and its parent company, TD Bank US Holdings, yada, 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 pleaded guilty today and agreed to pay over $1.8 billion in penalties to resolve the Justice Department's investigation into violations of the Bank Secrecy Act and money laundering. The bottom line, if we oversimplify this, it's that they were knowingly violating all protocol as relates to accepting cash deposits, know your client provisions, and having had sneaking suspicions that this was money laundering. What were the officials, were the employees getting kickbacks on their end to not even turn a blind eye, but rather to participate in the laundering?
I was informed in my interviews with a senior U.S. government expert with visibility on thousands of high-profile investigations, including El Chapo, including the Chinese crime bosses that not all of us will know their names like El Chapo. This expert told me bank staff in the tri-state area was complicit in this money laundering. It relates to the Chinese community for some reason, unlike anyone else in North America. It's accepted. I'm not going to judge it, but it's accepted within the community to transact in major amounts of cash. And Viva, I know from my history of studying the Vancouver model casino money laundering story, Canadian executives make the excuse when international narcos walk in with cash. Oh, this is accepted in the Chinese community. It's the same story for the TD branches. Employees within the community, so we're talking about neighborhoods with a high population of Chinese migrants, let students, international Chinese students, walk in. Remember, as a lawyer, how does a student make a couple $1 million in a year? They don't. The same story in Vancouver with the casinos. No due diligence. And here's the key. Okay, your branch staff was in on it, but the DOJ indictment says inadequate compliance. So that goes to the top of TD Bank. They were receiving suspicious activity reports and they weren't acting on them. They weren't looking at these branches that are off the scales in terms of the monthly money coming in. Therefore, do you call that willful blindness? That was the title of my book on the Vancouver model. And, that's what it looks like in this case.
What's amazing is I just went to do a couple of, Google a few tweets. TD, this is the same bank. TD Careers, this is from 2018, but it's kind of interesting. For Asian Heritage Month, we spoke with the leaders in TD's Chinese employee network to hear their thoughts on making a contribution to giving back to the community. Read what Jason Swing, Associate Vice President, Process Simplification, had to say. You say it, and as you're talking about it, call me whatever effing name you want. I remember what my TD bank looked like in Montreal. And now I'm, connecting some dots. It does make a little sense if they have connected employees working at these branches facilitating this. Holy cows. Back to your article, and I want to bring up the graphic because it's going to be pretty straightforward. You want to explain basically the mechanism. We don't need to read through this, but I'm going to give it to everybody to go and read through it. I mean,
yeah, so here's the key. I mean, taking a step back, you talk about life being, stranger than a Hollywood movie or more fascinating. In Mexico City, they have Mexican Chinese nationals, people with citizenship. There was a guy called the Mexican Whale, Zenli Yegon. He was found with $207 million US, in the room of his Mexico City hacienda. It was a precursor global businessman elite, but what he really is a global drug boss. They also have billionaire Chinese money brokers in Mexico City setting up the whole trade. So that's what the graphic indicates. You got like someone that looks like a professor or a bank manager, but they're the people. We talked about that casino in Markham, Ontario the last time, the 52-room mansion. Well, look, there's a guy that there are people at the top, the very top of Chinese organized crime set up in Toronto, global Chinese organized crime that are commanding financing the North American fentanyl trade because they set up those money laundering cash pickup contracts for the Latin cartels that are moving the fentanyl into American cities. And where do the Latin cartels get the precursors from? That's right, factories in Wuhan. So these drug bosses in Toronto and Mexico City are, putting up financing for the precursors to come in Mexico. When they collect the cash, they're sending that into, let's just say, TD Bank, any bank that accepts it, and then that will pay for, a Chinese factory to send a load of, let's just say, Nike shoes to Mexico, and that's the way that the proceeds are moved in a way where they don't. The pesos can be recovered by the cartel. And so you get that drug loop going. But the real mind blower, again, I can't get over it. Chinese international students welcomed into America on study visas are the key vector of carrying this drug cash around. And look, I guess, before my story broke this, the mainstream doesn't suspect, a Chinese international student to be behind, $1 billion, let's say, local $1 billion per year drug laundering operation.
I have many jokes about math that I want to make right now, but I won't do it because it would be politically incorrect. The question I did have, and it's what I DM'd you earlier this week, we're going to get to border security or the lack thereof in Canada, but everybody's argument, we talked about it a bit last time, only 1% of the fentanyl nabbed crossing the border is coming from the Canadian side to the US. The rest comes from Mexico through. Do you know if, we're manufacturing it here in record numbers, enough to kill hundreds, tens of hundreds, if not hundreds of millions of people? We're not consuming it all, so that's for certain. Is there any evidence indicating that it's actually going from Canada to South America, Mexico, and then crossing the border, which would account for why, at least on paper, so little of it is nabbed at the Canadian border?
Well, there's a few key things going on that I believe that my senior U.S. government sources were triggered by the misinformation that's being voiced by Canadian officials. I kind of suspect this could have started in the Prime Minister's office because that's the way it works. But and then the Globe and Mail, with a supposed investigation, cites seizure figures for the Customs and Border Patrol watching that the biggest free border in the world, northern one, and see the Custom Border Patrol only picks up something like, whatever it was, 40 pounds. So yeah, that does translate that figure to 1% in comparison to 98 from Mexico or some internal number from US production. But the key thing here is my sources said, no, that is just one agency. There are hundreds of US law enforcement agencies that have their own seizures and different data. I don't have that aggregated figure, right? But what I'm told by people, and people can research this, that this is proven. I mean, it's academic that this is a fact. Many different agencies have many different, data pools for seizures. The point here is that very senior people in the US say, Canadians, you're being misled. It's a lot more, and we know it from investigations. President Trump is not lying to you. He's not going out there and saying, Canada, you got a problem, without a lot of evidence behind him. And, you asked, where is it coming through South America? Is it going elsewhere, coming into the States? Look, as a logical person, you broke it down. Canada has super labs. Canada data says, the government admits Canada is a fentanyl exporter. Some of it's going to New Zealand, some going to Australia. I believe maybe even a little bit to Japan, but not all of it is going there. So a lot of it, my sources say, is going to the United States. And I'll give you an example. This is how complex it gets. We've got the Chinese financier drug lord in Toronto. He makes a deal. He commands that sort of cash pickup operation using students in New York. That money is laundered into TD Bank. Chinese drug lord in Markham, Ontario says, okay, we're now going to fund some production of shoes in China. They'll be sent to Mexico. That trade, once the cartel has those shoes, will release more fentanyl across the California border from Mexico. So it didn't even come across the Canadian northern border. Chinese drug lord in Toronto, who is connected up high in the Chinese government, directed that trade across the southern border. That's how complex it gets, and that's how implicated Canada is.
When we talked about it the last time, there was also discussion that they don't check train carriages or train trolleys crossing the border between Canada and the US. Any of your sources, do they tell you what sort of verification system there is between Canada and the US? Because another thing is that I don't think people really think about this, and I sort of thought about it since we last spoke. I think the way a custom and authorities treat the Mexican-American border is wildly different than the way authorities treat the Canadian-U.S. border. And so, there might just be...
Wow. So it's a military treatment at the southern border. It's the honor system on the northern border. And so I'll break it down like this. I'm a little bit proud because in my interviews, there's going to be a story coming out Saturday morning in which my senior intelligence source in the US says, I predict, Sam, that now that we're cracking down on the Mexican border, you will see an increased surge in the trend you've already seen, and that is Mexican cartels setting up in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Because the demand from the United States is not going down, the Mexican government and the US government are cooperating more on the southern border now. So the cartels will use Canada more. And you know what? A story, stay with me here, a story broke this morning that I reported. A Mexican cartel acknowledged hitman sought refugee protection in Canada in February, just a couple weeks ago, saying that he's afraid that Donald Trump is going to separate him from, his son. And here's I just want to add this. That's bad enough. It proves what my source just said. Beyond that, an immigration refugee board official released this acknowledged hitman connected to one of the most brutal Mexican cartels. And on April 1st, it wasn't a joke, April Fool's Day, a judge in Ottawa, thank goodness, reversed that release. So, I mean, it just shows you dangerous people have been coming into Canada from Mexico since the early 2000s, and it's going to get worse.
It's amazing. I want to get the demographics because it's one thing to know that 600 a month, 50,000 over 6 years. 80% of it is fentanyl related. And I would say, I want to know if you know this offhand, the percentage that is between the age of, say, 18 and 35. and we talked about this as being retribution for the opium wars and basically chemical warfare on a population.
A lot of it is young men, young working men. Yeah.
Young fighting men, if it comes to that ever.
If it comes to that, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, you break the story this morning, or you publish this story now. What is the status of all of this? Because Trudeau appointed some fentanyl czar. I don't know what he's done. They promised to tighten up the borders. I don't know what's been done. And Mark Carney hasn't said boo about it for obvious reasons, because it's a systemic failure from the Liberal Party. And finally, Pierre Poilievre is starting to scratch that itch a little bit and bring it to the surface. What have they done since the tariff war started? Well,
to break it down, one, again, I can now talk about a source on the record, Dr. David Asher, senior former Trump admin, investigator on global financial crime, terrorists, the Wuhan lab, everything. Such a senior source. He told me, look, the US government is not impressed with the Canadian response so far. Ottawa, okay, you bought some helicopters, you have more boots on the ground on the border. You're taking movies of people like patrolling the border. That isn't putting people in jail, right? So they're looking for real cooperation with the between America and Canada, and that terrorist designation. This is a key point of my recent stories, because the American government can go after cartels as terrorists. Powerful laws. They can go after bankers that turn a blind eye as facilitators. Complicit. They can go after, I believe, law offices. That should put a shiver of fear into a lot of Canadian lawyers, in my view. They can go after anyone that is tied to the fentanyl trade, and Canada so far hasn't gone after anyone. It's been a lot of talk. And, you ask about the status of play. I've seen that video from Mr. Poilievre, and really that is like damn common sense. It's like when I hear people, look, again, as a Canadian, the tariffs at the end of the day, they're unfair. Too many good people will be hurt. But America does have a deep security concern. That's at least some of the reason for blocking trade with China at the head of the table, and Mexico and Canada, which unfortunately are being used as proxies. And so, look, let's react from strength. Let's change our laws. Let's work with the United States. Let's use our own terrorism law to go after cartels in Canada and their Chinese financiers. And if we do that, we'll get the best deal at the negotiation table. And clearly, I've already stated so many times, Poilievre he will have a better plan by far than Carney on doing that. Because I'm sorry to say, I think there are people in the Liberal government that are directly complicit in laundering of money for these networks. And I'm talking about lawyers.
First of all, what I love is when you can finally reveal a source, and it's like I can feel your relief and also
coming off my shoulders.
Excitement. Yeah. The question was this: when it came to the TD banks and they pleaded guilty to money laundering, I presume, and it's relatively certain that the authorities have all of the details of those who were the clients in the laundering. Have they been going after the actual clients of the banks that are involved in money laundering drug money?
Well, on the Canada side, it really is farcical. So FinTrack, the Ministry of Finance, intelligence agency, fined TD $9 million, $9 million for the largest money laundering case of a bank in U.S. history. What message does that send to Washington? You ask, why are we getting tariffs now? Under the Trudeau government, I totally agree with you. What better way to invite tariffs and strong sanctions than complete lack of justice? And it's like saying, okay, our bank did this to your people. People are dying, and we're not going to do anything. That's not even close to a slap on the wrist. Where does it go from here? Look, when a couple of high-level sources say, how when people say something to you and they're holding something back, they're saying the DOJ indictment says inadequate compliance. They're telling me this case isn't over. Inadequate compliance means there could be alleged criminals identified in the upper management structure, because they're the ones responsible for compliance at the end of the day.
I'm gonna find these stats on the demographics of the overdoses in our locals community. Grumpy Old Man 1919 says, how many drug factories has Canada shut down? Explain these drug factories. It was Harrison Faulkner who reported on this, but I know that you have extensive knowledge on it as well. I mean, where are they located? Are they in like what's his name, Walter White's basement? I know some of them are on farms in very unsuspecting areas. What do these labs look like, and who's manning them? Is it Chinese Canadians, or is it Mexican Canadians? Is it cartels? Is it ordinary Canadians who get involved in this? What do they look like?
Yeah, no, I can break this down pretty well. So I did a story about a Canadian expert that could not be named, saying that, again, Trump, very hurtful words, but he's right. Canada's a problem. So back when Canada, was the marijuana capital of the world, and still is, they had, these super farms in northern BC, the prairie areas, northern Alberta, northern Ontario, very rural. And, it'll be, to get an image, major Quonset huts. Back then it was marijuana, still is. But now this is what they call super labs. And so, they'll set them up in a town with, one or two contracted RCMP officers. Often, in my understanding, you'll have some traditional biker presence around. So the bikers are involved at a lower to mid level. You have 100% in terms of the labor inside. I can't tell you that exactly, but at the top end of the scale, of course, it's China and the triads that set this up. You can look inside that Falkland lab for the sharp-eyed people. You'll find boxes of goods with Chinese writing on them, which says it all. There were also, I'm told, a Mexican lab, a known Mexican fentanyl lab recipe, if you want to call it that, for fentanyl was at the center of that Falkland, BC mountainous lab, super lab. I'm told also, I haven't confirmed this, I've confirmed the other points, looks like an Iranian state-linked sort of crime nexus connection there as well, which when I think back to it, I mean, someone else reminded me about 3 years ago, there was I believe, an Iranian actor in Toronto caught with enough carafentanyl, which is like 100 times more powerful than fentanyl, in their room in the greater Toronto area, that, people were a little bit shocked. They said, this could kill Canadians many times over. So what I want to say, stepping back, who's responsible for super labs? Who has the capacity set up basically factories in rural Canada? Chinese organized crime, Mexican cartels, and it looks like bikers are in there. It looks like some Indian transnational crime because they have a good grip on transportation systems in Canada. And it looks like Iranian state actors, I'm told, in pretty good sources. So the worst of the worst.
And you say Indian from India, not Indian Native American.
Indian as in from the Punjab area, okay. A lot of transnational organized crime that is related to terrorism.
It's like Canada is being cannibalized by foreign interests, foreign players. And I, again, call me whatever name you want. I don't care. China, India, cartels cannibalizing what was once Canada. As I asked the question about the Indians, actually, is anything being manufactured on native reserves because of the jurisdictional protection they have to some extent from the feds?
That is a great question, and I'm not aware of that. But what I am aware of is that current U.S. government intelligence, dated but very prescient Canadian government intelligence, said Indian reserves are used by Chinese transnational crime, and more recently, I hear from Mexican cartels to sell weapons, to sell, counterfeit cigarettes, all manner of things. And you're right, it's that jurisdictional shield that is used. So it would make sense, I do believe, that fentanyl was being produced there.
That's why you used to be able to get, before they legalized it, you could get marijuana on the reserves. Unless I'm having a bad memory, I remember you could get marijuana on the reserves. You certainly could get cheaper gas and phony or
cigarettes for 10 cents,
Okay, it's going to be the absurd question yet again. Political affiliation aside, I don't care. Why the hell is Poilievre or the Conservatives not jumping all over this? Why are they not making this the issue of the election? Or why are the Conservatives, as a political party, not doing anything about it? Are they tainted? Are they involved? Or I don't know. Is it too complex of a problem to even be resolved by an opposition party?
Taking a step back, there was a good MP in the Toronto area, Adam Chambers, who read my book, Willful Blindness. He came to one of my book launch events, did a speech about Canada is doing nothing on money laundering. He adopted my work. He tried to put a private member's bill through Parliament unsuccessfully to give our money laundering laws some teeth. So that's telling me at least there's, I believe Mr. Chambers is an honest and politician that wants to change Canada's problem on that, and has taken my research to heart and mind. Polyev, look, I'm not a politics reporter. I watch it pretty closely, but clearly Trump threw the whole contest off. The liberals, with the, elbows up, fake patriotism. Look, they took the early campaign, but you've posted that video, Mr. Polyev, talking sense, talking facts, which is really, I would say that message that he's saying is what I've been writing. Let's do something about it. Don't let our people die. So again, not a politics reporter, but looking at thousands of people singing "O Canada" at these Polyev rallies, it's showing me a depth growing within his campaign. It's showing me the sort of, let's call it the Trump conundrum of the early campaign is fading a little bit now that it looks like the tariffs might not be quite as bad as people thought. And Polyev now, I think, has a platform to push a real issue, and he can read my stories this week. Mexican cartel guy, an acknowledged hitman seeking refugee status in Canada, and an immigration judge was about to let this guy out on the street. Like, yeah, I do think I was listening to your opener there. He has a chance. He has a chance to take this campaign with just honesty.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. No matter what I do, I'm going to get shit on by somebody. I'm either criticizing Pierre out of love or hate, or maybe love for the country or hate for the country. People accuse me of wanting to fuck with the Canadian elections as though I'm not still Canadian. It's just whatever. Today seems to be a different day, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm not going to shut my big mouth. And speaking of big mouths, let me just see. What was I going to bring up? I was just about to bring up in the backdrop. Damn it, I forget what it was. Excuse me. No, that's what I was going to bring up. It was a rumble rant from Chet Chisholm, who said, for those wondering how fentanyl harms people, please look up the wooden chest syndrome. It is the paralysis of the diaphragm muscles, making it difficult and impossible to breathe or be ventilated by rescuers. And I'll bring this up just to show everybody. Where was it? The Wikipedia, wooden chest syndrome. Wooden chest syndrome is a rigidity of the chest following the administration of high doses of opioids or anesthesia. Describes a marked muscle rigidity, especially involving the thoracic and abdominal muscles. Yeah, it sounds like paralysis leading to suffocation.
Sounds like, dying and knowing you're dying, and like one of those bad dreams when something bad's happening and you can't wake up. I actually did a story. I felt pretty poignant there. A young woman that got hooked on Safer Supply in Vancouver, of course, described it as, I felt like I was dying, slowly dying so slowly. And that's what it is.
I won't get into the details. There were people who were at the event. No, but we were somewhere, and someone in the crowd, unbeknownst to us, OD'd. And like, everyone's like, look at the person. It's like, is the person dead? And the lips turned blue. And then like they kept the person going until they got Narcan, and they came in and revived the person. But for the doctors there, the person would have died in an overdose in front of, and it's silent. And it was just like, it was surreal. I'm such an idiot. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. No, speaking of Canada doing nothing and whether or not people are on it, you're not a political reporter. Are you able to speak to the story that recently broke in Canada about the Canadian MP at the Liberals who dropped out of the race after making the joke, or dropping off the Conservative candidate at the consulate for China to get the $1 million bounty? Are you familiar with that story?
Very, very much.
Please.
I was one of the ones that broke it. If not first, I was one of the first last Friday. So a Toronto pro-democracy group from the Chinese community realized that this man, a Markham area, again, Markham, Ontario, maybe see a pattern
it's
there.
coming up a lot these days.
Coming up. Okay, he's a Liberal MP. He won his seat in the 2021 election. This is the election that myself and the Globe and Mail have reported based on intelligence that China wanted a minority government. They wanted the Liberals to win. They attacked various conservatives, including the leader, Aaron O'Toole. And so this gentleman upset a Liberal. Sorry, he upset an incumbent conservative in the Markham area. But the key thing here is in January, to basically an exclusive gathering of Chinese journalists in Toronto, he was asked, if there's a conservative named Joseph Tay. He's a Hong Kong former sort of broadcaster. He's been broadcasting on YouTube from Toronto, talking about how Beijing has taken over, Hong Kong with their national security laws. And for that, Hong Kong, meaning Beijing, meaning the Chinese Communist Party, put a bounty on his head, a Canadian citizen, for speaking freely. And this bounty amounts to $1 million Hong Kong dollars, which is 180,000 Canadian dollars. So Justin Trudeau's MP, Paul Chien of Markham, tells these reporters it would be bad if my conservative rival is elected to Parliament, because that will create an issue since he's under the Hong Kong national security law. He then went on to say, so someone could get that bounty, take him to the Chinese consulate in Toronto. Ha ha. And sorry, I joked. But the key thing here is Joseph Tay and experts say that wasn't a joke. It's an intentional statement amplified through Mingpao newspaper to not only scare Joseph Tay, but to chill the whole Chinese voting community and send out that message. Beijing is watching. Don't criticize Beijing. Vote for liberals. Don't vote for conservatives. Don't vote for the guy on YouTube that says, Hong Kong has been taken over by the Chinese Communist Party. So I break the story on Friday. Throughout the weekend, updates, including, for example, international human rights groups send a letter to the RCMP commissioner saying, we believe the comments of Justin Trudeau's, Mark Carney's Liberal MP now could amount to criminal incitement. That is, could possibly, whether intended or not, encourage someone in the community to actually take Mr. Tay and rendition him to an embassy. And so, Mark Carney, I'll end my answer here. The pressure is growing as I'm reporting 4 or 5 stories over the weekend. Other media is jumping on it. All the mainstream outlets now reporting Mark Carney basically goes into hiding on the weekend. Clearly, they're in the bunker deciding what to do. If they're like Justin Trudeau, very likely they don't want to piss off China and the funders of the Liberal Party that actually are connected to Beijing and on the ground in Canada. So Mr. Carney, Prime Minister Carney finally comes out to a campaign event on Monday and says, I have confidence in Paul Chien. He's a former police officer.
Yeah.
He meant no wrong. It was a teachable moment. As I call him, the patrician Carney actually said that, looking down at Canadians. It was a teachable moment.
Unbelievable.
Okay. And so as the day goes on, Monday, the RCMP acknowledged they're at least looking into the events. And at around midnight on Monday, Mr. Chien steps down and resigns, says he of course apologizes, did nothing wrong, but he's going to step away so he won't be a distraction. And that's basically where we are, but a pretty monumental event, actually. What's
amazing is I've been struggling to find the exact quote because the BBC propagandists don't include the quote. Neither does a lot of the Canadian media. What he said, and I got a couple of follow-up questions, was, if you can take him, being the conservative guy, I forget his name, Paul Tay, T-A-Y. If you can take him to the Chinese Consulate General in Toronto, you can get the $1 million reward. The comments were made in reference to a warrant and bounty issued by Hong Kong authorities. First of all, it's egregious. It's obscene. Why would there even be a consulate in America that would arrest a Canadian citizen for a foreign bounty? The initial question I had is, because I didn't even hear Pierre talking about it. I'm like, okay, Pierre, why would you not be jumping on this? He sort of mentioned it and, whatever. But I said, why would he not be jumping on it? Was there any malice or was there any culpability to the bounty existing in the first place? Like, my thought was, did Pierre not want to highlight the fact that there was a bounty on one of the conservative MPs, or does he not want to highlight that there's a Chinese conservative MP? Was there any legitimate reason for which there was a bounty that would involve wrongdoing by TI?
Okay, first of all, the bounties are all international human rights, international law says that's an illegal bounty. Like China, remember we were talking about the Chinese police station story. This is it. They're reaching into our democracies and trying to tell people who to vote for, trying to tell people what they can say, trying to tell people and basically overtly and subtly threaten people, we can take you back to China. And Viva, in fact, they have. One of my stories brought out an internationally recognized NGO with figures that at least 27 Canadians have been forcibly repatriated to China through this type of activity. So one, it's China, I don't even know why we have diplomatic relations with them when they can do this kind of stuff and place bounties on
Canadian MPs. No, and so it is the case that there's actually no wrongdoing that resulted in the bounty being placed on him. It's not like he committed a crime.
Wrongdoing. He has a YouTube channel. He's expressing basically an opinion about China. That's it.
Well, shit. Now I got to make sure that I don't have a bounty on my head in China. Although not that I plan on going anytime soon. Okay, so fine. That answers one question. Where I was like, why is Pierre not talking about it? But why the hell is Pierre not talking about it? Like these are things that highlight the infiltration and what I'll call the cannibalization of Canada to foreign interests that inculpates Mark Carney and his Liberal Party. What the hell? I don't understand. I don't understand the baby gloves that Pierre is wearing. So the guy resigned. What was his name? Paul Chiang.
Yeah.
He resigned. Thus far, whether or not it rises to the level of criminal wrongdoing in Canada, we'll see. There have been no criminal charges laid just yet. RCMP is investigating.
I don't expect much to come out of that investigation at all. But I don't want to forget, because you're a lawyer. Look, one of the police associations in the Toronto area that were former colleagues of Mr. Chain came out and said, Mark Carney's standing by this man and citing his activity as a former police officer as a reason why he should not step down is egregious. The Police Association from Durham Region said this shows a clear lack of integrity on the part of Mark Carney. So you're right. That completely nails what should be said about the matter. In terms of why the Conservatives, they came out pretty hard, eventually maybe a day or two late. But you're right. I think you're onto something. Look, Viva, I broke this story. No one in North America knows what's going on with this infiltration of our parliaments and the U.S. government too, more than I do. The Conservatives do have a level of fear of criticizing because, as I said to you before, they're exposed to the same nefarious forces, perhaps even in some of their nominations. But I want to stress, it's the Liberal Party by far that is the most exposed, the most egregiously corrupted by China's activity.
Well, we're going to come back to where we started in the Markham pleb. The reporters in the house. How you doing, pleb? Wait, deactivate your camera for a few minutes. It's like, this goes right back to the beginning. The Markham Casino, where the dirt that they might have on Conservatives might not be Chinese infiltration, but they might have blackmail because politicians are scumbags left and right. And any of them going to these, whatever they're rubbing elbows with, whatever, they could have all been susceptible of some sort of blackmail operation. But the overt political infiltration definitely seems to be predominantly left. I would be hammering Carney on this and the drugs and everything, but we'll see where it goes. Sam, anything that I forgot to ask you today that you absolutely wanted to? It's just so.
We have two questions in the private chat here in Rumble Studio for you. I saved those for you.
Good. Let me do that because Sam. It's so fascinating. I've been slow to the learning curve, but learning fast. It's unreal the degree to which Canada is compromised, and people don't understand.
Fast-breaking story. On the political side and on the organized crime side, we're experiencing chaos here in Canada. And again, people come to the Bureau again. I'm going to break a story tomorrow with more on that. U.S. government experts saying Canada is very nearly, hanging. Its democracy is in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a question here. I'm going to give the link to the Bureau article. Go follow Sam. Your Twitter handle. I'll put it in the link afterwards. Is what, Sam_Cooper?
At Scooper Cooper and
Scooper. At Scooper
News.
Cooper.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to put them in now. Encryptus in our locals community hyphen says, Viva, ask him if he's aware of the 43 kilograms of carafentanil found at the Danforth shooter's apartment.
That's exactly what twigged me about. Look, it looks like Iranian state actors are involved in these super labs. Yeah, that was the story, and a crushing amount of carafentanil. People can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's 50 to 100 times stronger than fentanyl. And some people thought, look, is that a weapon of mass destruction?
For those who don't know what it is, it was the 2018 shooting, a mass shooting that occurred on Danforth Avenue in Greektown neighborhood in Toronto, by Faisal Hussein, who killed 2 people and wounded 13. I totally forgot. So they found 14. How many did he say? 40. They found 43 kilograms at Faisal's house, the murderer's house.
I don't know about 43. I know it was a lot. And carafentanil is like, it literally, that could be a weapon of war. I don't think anyone is saying it was. What it's saying is that's enough to kill like North America many times over.
That's, do I go?
Yeah, it's actually a couple micrograms aerosolized can kill a city, basically. And when we're talking about what is nearly 100 pounds, could essentially kill most of the world if aerosolized.
Holy
and
shit.
so it can also be broken up into just like, I don't know how many pills. It doesn't have to be a weapon, but let's circle back to people saying Canada, not very responsible for North America's fentanyl problems. A case like that just shows you, come on, people, do not deny.
Well, this is what Grok says. Take it for what it's worth. However, there are reports indicating that a significant quantity of carafentanil, 42 kilograms, was discovered in a separate location connected to his brother, Fahad Hussein. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Holy hell!
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to see what's going to break tomorrow. Maybe you'll come back on next week and we'll go over the latest.
Happy to do it. It's an important and a busy time.
Everyone, if I have an ask, please snip and clip 1 minute, tag Joe Rogan, get Sam Cooper on Joe Rogan, because this needs to be out there, amplified before the election day. There was some fake news on Twitter. I'm sure the pleb is going to get into it about Slapinski, a guy that we all love to hate, who tweeted out that Pierre is going on Rogan. That's totally fake. And there's no announcement for that yet, but tweet out a minute of this. Tweet it out, tag Joe Rogan, get Sam Cooper on, and blow the mind of Joe Rogan as to what is going on in Canada. Sam, we're in touch, man. I thank you very much. Whenever and every time, just let me know and please come back.
Have a great weekend.
Okay,
Bye.
you too. And now.
Well, if that doesn't blow your mind, holy smokes. Anyhow, that's the end of the stream. I'm going to do another one a little bit later. But, gosh, anybody watching this, please share this. Canadians are woefully blind of what's going on in our country here. Woefully blind. Anyhow, going to stop the stream. Goodbye. We'll catch you.